Good morning, everyone. My presentation for today is entitled Reflective School Community Leaders. My name is Dr. Ethel Reyes-CHUA, a freelancer and an educator with a heart. Let me start by stating the outline of my presentation, of course, with a brief introduction, followed by the reflective thinking and reflective practice descriptions, the reflective leadership and transformational leadership compared, getting into the habit of reflection, reflective practice for school community leadership, my conclusion and reflection of this topic. Are you reflective? On this talk, I will elaborate how to become a reflective practitioner or a reflective individual, a reflective teacher, and a school community leader in the light of my own experiences as an educator. There's only one objective for today's topic, and that is to become a reflective practitioner. So when we say reflective, we think of how we can improve. John Dewey has started this reflective thinking, and he even wrote a book entitled How We Think. This was already introduced in 1910, so it's not something new. It is something that we already do, but we tend to forget how we name it. So John Dewey believes that learning improves to the degree that arises out of the process of reflection. In our day-to-day life, it is futile if we don't reflect and evaluate what we have done. So reflection is really important, not only as an academician or as a leader, but as an ordinary person. Reflection is our day-to-day routine. Becoming reflective is important not only for a school community leader. So I believe that anyone could become reflective if he or she follows the process of reflection. When you hear the word reflection or becoming reflective, what comes into your mind? So these words are synonymous to critical thinking, problem solving, higher level thought, evaluation, or critical analysis. McGregor and Cartwright 2011 emphasized that reflection and evaluation are inherent in the job and are essential part or an essential part of developing your skills. So if you are an individual, you try to evaluate the impact of your actions every day. You try to reflect and improve. You identify priorities for improvement. So you are already practicing the so-called becoming reflective. Let me just share with you some of my experiences on this aspect by describing what reflective teaching is. Reflective teaching is about quality of critical thinking. This is also according to Pollard 2019. And he asked, how would you know if your students have critical thinking skills? By giving them questions that will enhance their critical thinking and decision-making skills. It is important to reflect on one's teaching, according to Ziegner and Liston, because when you reflect, you get to know your life's purpose as well as your place in the world. Baumfield 2013 also emphasizes the importance of reflection through research. And all this I have discovered to be true. In one of my reflective learning journey in Italy, when I presented a research paper, I have realized so many things in life. I considered my journey as my reflective learning experiences, which was so fulfilling and very satisfying. So this journey brought me into realization about my profession, and then as the former dean of the School of Education in Emilio Aguinaldo College, Cavite, and my life as an individual and as a professor. So during this journey, I had time to evaluate the impact of my teaching on the progress of students and modify teaching practice as necessary. I had time to reflect on and improve my teaching practices and take responsibility for identifying and meeting my students and fellow teachers' professional needs. I had time to identify priorities for professional development. I also had time to realize the value of myself. So I thought of, I am important, no matter what happens. I had time to reflect on how to deal with people. I learned more how to apologize and accept things as they come. Think about how to make my life improve by not blaming others. And I also had time to reflect on the value of friendship, love, and camaraderie. Internalize the importance of emotions. Recognize the value of individual differences. And by respecting them, will make them realize who they are. And finally, I had time to reflect on how to become more critical without criticizing other people. So during this journey, I was able to build linkage, connections, network, and collaborations, which prepare me to become more professional. Positive people that I've met turned me into a better version of myself. Moving on to our next topic, which is the reflective thinking and reflective practice. Again, according to John Dewey, reflective thinking is an active, persistent, and careful consideration of a belief. Because when you reflect, you need to evaluate, reconsider, and weigh new things. Now, what is really reflective practice? It is the process which needs to be repeated in a cycle. And as a reflective school community leader, normally you teach students or give instructions to your people or subordinates. So after that, what's next? There is a need for self-assessment. Self-assess the effect of your teaching or your instructions. Then consider new ways which can improve the quality of learning and your instructions. Try new ideas in practice and be able to repeat the process. Finlay 2008 says that reflective practice is learning through and from experience towards gaining new insights of self and practice. Thus, it is important to communicate with our neighboring institutions or community. Who knows? We can get best practices that can be applied in our own institution. So when we go deeper about this reflection, it is a systematic reviewing process for all of us, which allows us to make links from one experience to the next, making sure that our students make maximum progress or making sure that our subordinates understand us better. I want to pose these questions before proceeding to the next topic. Was there an instance that you tried to approach your staff because you notice that he or she is not performing better? Was there an instance that you get to know your people by joining them for lunch? Or was there a moment of reflection between you and your staff after the evaluation? Did you have a conference with him or her? Do you enjoy talking with them? And this is all about reflective practice. Why? Why is there a need to do this? Reflective practice helps create confident individuals or teachers or leaders. Reflective practice develops your ability to understand how students learn and the best way to teach them. By reflecting on your own teaching, for example, you identify any barriers to learning that your students have. You create new lessons which reteach any content which your students have not been able to access, or to allow them to overcome any obstacles and to develop. So the benefits of reflective practice are a lot. The first one is it also creates or helps create confident people in your department. Why? Because it helps you more to understand them. By reflecting, you create something new. And when you create something new, there's another reflection that will. Reflective practice makes sure that you are responsible for yourself and for the rest of the group. Like when you are teaching, it will help you understand how your students learn best, and that will allow you to become accountable for them. By assessing their strengths and weaknesses, you will develop an awareness of the factors that control and prevent learning. It also encourages innovation. Why? Reflective practice allows you to adapt lessons to suit to your classes. You can create and experiment new things, ideas, and approaches. By varying learning and experimenting, students have a richer learning experience. They will think more creatively, imaginatively, and resourcefully, and become ready to adapt new ways and methods of thinking. Reflective practice also encourages engagement. Being reflective helps you challenge your own practice, as you will justify decisions and rationalize choices you have made. As an administrator, it is never easy. We need to encourage and to develop understanding of different perspectives and viewpoints with the department. And these viewpoints might be of those your colleagues, your subordinates, focusing on their strengths, preferences, and developments, or those of others, sharing best practices and different strategies. When you become more aware of your staff preferences, their strengths, learning becomes more tailored to their needs. And so they are more curious and are equipped to explore more deeply. Could we say now that reflective practice benefits all? The answer is yes. By reflecting, you create an environment which centers on the people around you. And this environment will support them to become more innovative, more confident and engaged, and be responsible. Once you start the reflective process, your quality of teaching and learning will improve. Reflection focuses on the learning process. So learning outcomes and results will improve as you reflect on how to deal with people, around you. So for us school community leader, by getting involved in the reflective process, you will create an environment of partnership, working as you question and adapt both your own practice and of your colleagues. The learning process then becomes more active as you are more aware of what you want your staff and other people to achieve, delivering the results which can be shared throughout the institution. Now, do you think it's easy to become one? The answer lies on your hands. Educational researchers have long promoted the importance of reflecting on practice to support student learning and staff development. There are many models of reflective practice. However, they all share the same basic aim, and that is to get the results from the learning for both the teacher or students, the school administrator, or the staff. It's all the same. Let's try to move on to research behind reflective practice. Here, David Kolb introduced the learning cycle. David Kolb is an educational researcher. He developed a 4-stage of reflective model. And he called this Kolb's learning cycle in 1984. He highlights reflective practice as a tool to gain conclusions and ideas based on experience. So the aim is to take the learning into new experiences. So completing the cycle, the Kolb cycle follows 4 stages. First, practitioners have a concrete experience. What is your experience as a teacher, as an administrator, or as a leader in your community? This means experiencing something new for the first time. The experience could be an active one, used to test out new ideas. So this is followed by what? Observation. When you observe, you get to see things clearly. Then you try to reflect on this observation, on this experience. Here, practitioners should consider the strengths of this experience and areas of development. Practitioners need to form an understanding of what helps students learning and what hindered it. This should lead to the formation of abstract concepts or the abstract conceptualization. In this stage, the practitioner needs to make sense of what has happened. They should do this through making links between what they have done, what they already know, and what they need to learn. The practitioner should draw on ideas from research and textbooks to help support development and understanding. They could also draw on support from other colleagues and their previous knowledge. Practitioners should modify their ideas or devise new approaches based on what they have learned from their observations and wider research. And the final stage of the cycle is called active experimentation. Here, the practitioner considers how they're going to put what they have learned. The practitioner's abstract concepts are made concrete as they use this to test in future situations, resulting in new experiences. The ideas from the observations, from the abstract conceptualizations are made into active experimentation as they are implemented into future activities. The cycle is then repeated on this new method. What other practitioners say about reflective practice? In a research conducted by Cambridge, many professionals wrote out their opinions about becoming a reflective practitioner. And these people have different nationalities and experiences working with the academe or industry. And they say, one of them says, reflective practice is challenging your own beliefs and values. In order to see the validity and be open to reflect and evaluate how accurate are those beliefs. and to change in order to improve your professional development. Another one says, I think reflective practice is when you think why I am doing something and how it works. So it is a big change between how perhaps traditional teachers. Another one says, I think reflective practice is when you think I am doing something and how it works. So it is a big change between how traditional teachers were. It was a big distance between the theory and practice. Another professional says, reflective practice is the beating of heart of teaching. Without it, a teacher stagnates, goes dead. You need to keep on adjusting, thinking, but not just thinking alone. You have to draw into resources to see what others have said. Research and reading is also important. Not a lot of research, a lot of reading, but on key points. Even just watching a small video clip that shows how to, like, once you see an area of improvement or how to improve. Similarly, another one says reflective practice is basically thinking about your own work and how you're doing it. How can you make it better? And there's a scope for improvement every time. So be open-minded enough to take on new challenges and improving yourself all the time. Moving on to the topic reflective leadership and transformational leadership. Reflective thinking can also be described as deep thinking. These reflective thinking and practice skills, which also have a very significant place in the extent of management, as in all fields of education, play a key role in ensuring success and sustainability in school organizations. Reflective leaders encourage their followers to learn from their experiences, and this occurs only through reflective learning. That is according to Castelli, Marx, and Eggleston, 2014. A reflective school leader is a leader with high level of self-awareness and awareness regarding the people around, who can analyze how everyone in the organization can contribute to both organizational culture and its effectiveness, can find ways on how to naturally channel those characteristics of people into the operation of the organization, come up with efficient solutions to emerging problems during the entire process, and transform the organization into a contented and productive environment. How do you like that to happen? So accordingly, a reflective leader should be a critical thinker. Experience by itself is not sufficient. For the realization of learning, reflection needs to accompany experience. Therefore, reflective thinking helps us to gather meanings from our experiences and use this knowledge as a guide for our future actions. This is also according to Dodley, 1996. Without reflection that provides learning through experience, behavior and thinking schemes cannot gather together to create the necessary changes. According to Dodlin, reflection means moving one step back from the experiences and thinking attentively and insistently, thus inferring past and present events to create experience that will guide future actions are very important. Cooper and Boyd defined reflection to be not only what one did or does, but also focusing on thinking and understanding. Good students think about their own thinking and know how to reflect their experiences to future endeavors. Decisions made upon reflective analysis are not random. They are intentional and thoroughly analyzed, according to Rolheiser and Steve in 1998. So the concept of reflective practices has a historical basis and the place in works of John Dewey, as mentioned earlier, Piaget, and Lewin. These names generally argued in their work that experience is the foundation of learning, but they also emphasized that reflection is a very important concept for learning to happen. Later and more contemporary works also stress that reflective practices are effectual and necessary to create the intended amelioration in educational institutions. That's according to Biggs et al. Reflection helps the individual to focus totally on their own work, improves their insight about it, and let them and their colleagues develop professional practices. Ornstein, 1996, says this. So it sets the scene for the exposure of differences between the theories set forth by individuals and the practices they have implemented based on such theories. So reflective practices provide useful solutions for change and foster it as well. Well, personal reflection includes metacognitive, cognitive, affective, and motivational components. With this personal reflective awareness, the mind observes and discovers experience itself. What is the possible outcome of personal reflection? Goldman 1995 says, the possible outcome of personal reflection is the consistency of thoughts, feelings, motives, and behavior. Reflective practices help uncover implicit questions. These vague questions that usually lead to inner contradictions and restrictions, and their disclosure that provides opportunity or the opportunity for widening the perspective and producing different alternatives. The real aim of reflective practice is to let the individual gain awareness, openness, and deeper sense of success. This deep satisfaction of success is unbound to place, time, and things. It is far from the present experience and inhabits the mind. That's according to Goldman, 2004. Reflection is used in many fields, and the analysis of research in the field of education shows many works in pedagogical practices. It is also considered as a tool for leadership in the analysis of compelling professional problems and situations in the academy. There is a research that I found on an international journal of science and environment, which aims to evaluate the level of reflective leadership skills of school principals through the perspective of science and math teachers. Results showed that science and math teachers perceive the level of reflective school leaders or reflective leadership skills of their principals to be middle. Even though math teachers were found to perceive the reflective leadership skills of their school leaders to be higher than science teachers, it was seen from further questioning that there was no significant difference between these branches. Another finding resulted from this last question was that the second dimension of perceived reflective leadership school principles, the dimension of purpose, had a higher average than the first factor, safe and open environments. And the third factor is the challenging assumptions. Skillful reflective leaders firstly have to define their goals very clearly and then evaluate themselves and their thoughts continuously and make this necessary or changes in their personal and professional practices according to the results of this study. Hence, findings of this research were found to be supportive of the examples in literature. The reflective leadership is closely correlated also to transformational leadership. Waldman, 1994, for example, emphasizes that the transformational leadership approach has to consider leaders' differing viewpoints and values. Some researchers suggest that reflective leadership is a way to accomplish transformational leadership. All researchers agree on the point that transformational leadership is a skill that is necessary for all organizations due to its personal and organizational effects. And this close relationship between leadership or reflective leadership and transformational leadership shows us that all organizations need a reflective leader. Are you one of them? Based on the findings, which showcases a section, the fact that teachers perceive their school principals' leadership skills to be at the middle is very inspiring. This finding not only shows that reflective leadership is a natural asset of school principals without any specific training on the subject, but also that this skill can be enhanced through training. Schools principals' awareness of the relationship with their followers as reflective leaders can be risen. Olilia 2000 says that, and their awareness of themselves and others can be further developed. In this way, a big contribution can be made to the reflective leadership skills. We come to the conclusion of this topic, and this is getting into the habit of reflection. In teaching, as in life, maximizing meaning from experiences requires reflection. The act of reflection, particularly with a group of teaching colleagues, provides an opportunity for amplifying the meaning of one's work through the insights of other people, applying meaning beyond the situation in which it was learned, making a commitment to modifications, plans, and experimentation, and finally, documenting learning and providing a rich base of a shared knowledge. Internal and external voices play a big role in reflection. The ultimate purpose of reflection is to get us into the habit of thinking about our experiences. So once educators have developed this habit, they start hearing both an internal and external voice of reflection. The internal voice of reflection is a self-knowledge that involves what and how we are thinking, even unconsciously. Many people are not used to engaging in the self-talk that is necessary for hearing. So the path to reflection is documenting these internal and external conversations through records, because it will help us to measure the organization's progress toward a greater valuing of reflective practices. But before making such assessment, the school needs to create an atmosphere for reflection. Just like when you try to build or when you try to analyze students' reflective practices, first, you should know how to analyze yours. You should be a reflective practitioner before your students will. The school needs to create this kind of environment or atmosphere. Step into any school, it will most likely be lively and noisy. School must dedicate time and space for reflection, away from the school issues and the student problems that can fill a day. At the beginning of each semester or year, there should be a departmental meeting, taking a few minutes to know each other, to know each other's activities, and a place for looking backward and inward, not forward and up. There are strategies for reflection that were mentioned by scholars. A school should invite both students and educators to reflect on teaching and learning all at the same time, especially during the school change process, which can be hard on students and educators alike. Students often give educators insights into the worthiness of the changes that the school is instituting, and reflecting on these changes can help students identify how will they benefit them. Metacognitive reflection is one strategy. This invites thinking about thinking and help our students make meaning out of events. Teachers can conduct discussions with students about their problem-solving processes. They can invite students to share their metacognition. When you say metacognition, it is thinking about thinking or understanding, to reveal their intentions, strategies, and plans for solving a problem, to describe their mental maps for monitoring their strategies during the problem-solving process, to reflect on strategies to determine their adequacy. Those who practice metacognition learn to listen to, explore the implications of one another's strategies, and builds us habits of mind as empathy, flexibility, independence, and persistence. Another strategy is the collaborative dialogues held between teachers and the administration, or the administration among students. This will cause participants to share their reflections and outline their progress toward the mastery of their task. Time should be set aside at the end of learning sequence for participants to question another about what they have learned and how they can apply their knowledge and skills in future settings. So as community leaders, we need to be able to have a creative and constructive critical approach towards innovation. Act upon advice and feedback. Ensure that colleagues working with them are appropriately involved. Involve your colleagues in decision making, and that would make them feel important in the organization. So as a school community leader, be the role model of your department. Show them the different changes that you can do. Be the role model for your documentation as well, because this is very important. Say, for example, building your portfolio, creating your philosophy as an administrator that becomes your guide at work, establishing a standardized curriculum vitae or resume, encouraging them or your people to appreciate the documentation process in your departments because they are very essential. Document your effectiveness as an administrator, as a teacher, having the summarized evaluation and feedback from your peers and others, sample of your colleagues' works, showing them the effectiveness of teaching, the summarized evaluation of your peers, of your fellow administrators, or feedback from the students. Keep also those conferences or seminars that you have attended, those things that will improve instruction, the design of courses, development of trainings, contributions to the teaching profession, any research conducted or research papers presented, research articles published, committees, extra and co-curricular activities, and community involvement. Honors and awards, recognitions, certificates of appreciations. This will comprise your portfolio as a teacher or as an administrator. There are other ways to become reflective by writing a diary or journal, which I always do, making a recording of your meetings. And when you go back to it, you'll see some changes that you want to do. Getting feedback from a colleague, observing you, and getting feedback from other people. Understanding the learning management system of the institution. And sometimes we also need to reflect on how we grow by adopting new models of reality and new systems of living. Tony Robbins says, our beliefs are like unquestioned commands. telling us how things are, what's possible and impossible, and what we can and cannot do. They shape every action, every thought, and every feeling we experience. As a result, changing our belief systems is central to making any real and lasting change in our lives. Elon Musk says, I think it's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. Steve Jobs says, for the past 33 years, I have looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? Whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Mr. Haboneta suggested self-awareness. To practice this at all times, there are many notifications on our gadgets, and we tend to forget those people who are important in our life. Learn how to internalize what you're doing and enjoy what you really want to do in life. Empathy. It's the art of teaching. Complex communication in the 21st century skills. As administrators, we should know how to use different platforms. There are so many. If you know one, do not try to limit your knowledge to only one. Reflect on how good you are at using the computer, the internet, and the various learning management systems. From there, start teaching your colleagues or your subordinates to become a good communicator. Teach them how to drive in this new normal. New things to upgrade your life's operating system. To end this talk, I would like to introduce to you, to summarize everything that I've said into 2 words, and this is what you call transformative reflection. If you try all the strategies that I have mentioned, then and only then, you are willing to change and embrace the new one. And this is what is called transformative reflection. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed my talk. Good day.